Being 5:30, I will call to order the regular meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission for Garden City for January 19th, 2022. In lieu of roll call, I will stipulate that Commissioners Brown, Rasmussen, and Wilde are present in the chamber. Commissioner Pounds is absent. Would everybody rise and we'll have a pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. In keeping with what has already previously been announced, I'm stepping down as the chairman, and the mayor has appointed the new chairman to be Commissioner Rasmussen. So with that, if we were in the military, we would have a big fancy change of command ceremony for any of you that's been in the military. And but that's as fancy as it's going to get.
All right, well, I've got big shoes to fill, and hopefully we can get through tonight like a partially oiled machine at least. So the next item on the agenda, oh, and by the way, I need to mention that because I've been appointed as the chairman, Commissioner Brown has been appointed as the vice chair for this year. So for the staff, any changes to the agenda?
Chairman and members of the commission, staff is suggesting that perhaps there be one change to the agenda that's a little bit different. There are two subdivisions that are scheduled to be heard tonight. Subdivision fiscal year 21, number 9, and subdivision fiscal year 22, number 1. Both of those items were heard by the design review yesterday, and the design review committee for both of those items did request that they come back with some revisions that are anticipated to affect both the architectural renderings as well as potentially the site plans. And so staff is suggesting that you open a brief discussion on both of those items to determine whether or not you'd like to move forward and hear those items based on the information that's been provided to date, knowing that it's likely that it will change as it goes through. Or if you'd prefer to wait and continue to a date certain of February 16th, 2022, provided that the applicant can submit revised materials to the city by the 2nd of February. If you certainly can open up the hearing and hold the whole hearing and then choose to continue to a date certain, should you decide at that time that that's the correct course, or you could open a discussion, and certainly there could be no predetermined decision on items, but you could note that what items that potentially they may take into consideration while they're revising their plans for design review. Staff has noted that this body has discussed a number of plan unit developments this past year, and housing continues to be an issue. Again, without a predetermined decision, perhaps there could be some level of guidance on both of the applications if that appears that it will be a sticking a sticking point for those applications, and any other items that may be something that they might consider during their review of the applications.
So if we hear these items tonight, we will carry the hearing all the way through a motion to whatever that motion would be.
Chairman, that is correct. Certainly within your realm, they're noticed up to be heard tonight. There's members of the public in the audience as well as the applicants. You could hear it and make a recommendation, an approval, denial, or request a continuance at the conclusion of a hearing. And the proposal for just moving those items to the beginning of the agenda and opening them up for discussion may be to decide whether or not you want to hear them fully or provide a discussion prior to the applicant or call any portion of the public hearing process that you find appropriate. We'll make sure to get that in the record as part of the record. But if you don't hold the full public hearing, the one thing I do recommend is making sure that there's no predetermined decision. So no concrete yes or no without holding the full public hearing and considering all of the evidence based on the public hearing.
Okay, thank you, Jenna.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question that I need to have clarified before we make that decision. Mr. Chairman, Jenna, if we open it up to the preliminary discussion of whether we're just going to make a decision to put it off for a month or 2 months, during that, would we be able to indicate where we might have some questions, or would we have to put that off and have a discussion as part of a hearing to do that?
Chairman, Commissioner Brown, I believe that you can ask, so you could take a variety of formats, I believe. I believe that you could call the applicant for specific questions. You could ask for the applicant's presentation and then ask questions, or you could have a discussion, and we will make sure that that is incorporated into the record. This is recorded and it'll be a part of the minutes and the record documents.
Okay. Thank you, Jenna.
Thank you.
So I would ask the commission then, given what appears to be two options, have us have a discussion about now whether we're going to hear these or continue them. How does my fellow commissioners feel about those two options?
Mr. Chair, Jenna has heard me say it before, I'll say it again. I am often frustrated by the design review. I think it adds a lot of value. The applicants going through the design review itself. What often frustrates me is that we do have instances like this where there is guidance from DR that changes an application. Sometimes it's substantive and material, sometimes it isn't. And we actually don't know that, as Jenna gives us the heads up here, whether it is or it isn't. What I don't want to do tonight is waste the public's time or the applicant's time. But again, we don't know if the applicant, without asking the applicant, if they're here, they've got all the material, they want to do it. My preference would be to defer it to a date certain, so that we can have a full and fair presentation and we don't make anybody sit here any longer than they need to.
Okay. Commissioner Brown?
Mr. Chairman, and thank you. I agree 100% with Commissioner Wilde. My preference would be, rather than have everybody sit there and go through a bunch of questions, which I know that we have, that may have already been answered or will be answered in response to the things that the design review committee did. I do want to say the following with regard to the first subdivision. And I think this will be a matter of record and I won't be doing it, but I would, if we were to hear it, I was prepared. I would have asked a lot of questions. And they all have to do with the engineer's report, which has a bunch of stuff in it. This is subdivision FY 2021, number 9, Wandering Trails. And to give you an idea, these are the engineers looked at it twice. And I'll put right up front, as the staff knows, I'm a licensed professional civil engineer in Idaho. And one of my areas of practice that I'm qualified by training and experience is acting in is drainage. And those blue tabs are an indication of how many areas that I have questions. And almost all of them come down to issues that I have that the engineer asked with regard to the drainage and the drainage plan and what is not available in that, and it's detailed in the list of questions. So I am putting that out as sort of giving a guide to the applicant of what areas that I would have been asking questions about. And beyond that, I'm very much in favor of what Commissioner Wilde said.
So my thoughts on this were to actually hear them, and using your example there with the engineering report on that particular application. Hearing it tonight would give you the opportunity to raise those and then allow them to address that, have an extra 30 to 35 days or whatever to get those things addressed before they come back to design review. So it was my feeling that we could hear these tonight and move these forward with our feedback, the planning and zoning's perspective, and then have them take that data with them or that information with them through the latter half of this month and the first half of February before they went into the design review, the next design review meeting. That's where I came down. Clearly, Commissioner Wilde and Commissioner Brown feel otherwise, and so I'm perfectly open to deferring these to the next our next meeting, February 16th as well, if you both feel that way. So I think that's what we should do. Any other further?
But not opening them to anything tonight.
No, we would just, the way I'm understanding what you gentlemen are saying is that we would just continue them to a date certain of February 16th when we do the consent agenda.
I kind of think that's what we ought to do.
Yeah, yes.
Okay, so then whenever we do the motion for the consent agenda, the commissioner that makes the motion just will need to add those two continuations to February 16th. So I think that said, we'll move on to the rest of the consent agenda, which currently contains just the minutes from our last meeting on December 15th. Oftentimes we use the consent agenda to move other items on the agenda. It could include items of business which may not require separate discussion. In order to do that, I have to ask a couple of specific questions. So the first one is there anyone, and I'll first go to our first, the one that we want to, I'm going to just go through the agenda item by item that's left. So the first one is CUP FY 2022-4. So is there anyone in the audience for that particular item who would like to give public testimony in opposition to that? That was Damon Beard requesting the use of a vehicle washing facility at 8200 West Chinden Boulevard. Okay, so we'll take that as a no.
Did you look in Zoom land?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is there anyone on Zoom? I can't, help me out if there's somebody up there that's raising their hand. Thank you, Jenna. Okay. Is the applicant present for that particular item? Okay, great. Have you had the opportunity to review the findings of fact, conclusions of law, and draft decision, including draft conditions of approval?
Yeah.
Do you agree and consent to these documents, including all conditions of approval? Okay. Does staff have any reason to believe that this item needs to be discussed on the record? Okay. Does the commission have any discussion or concerns that they would like to get on the record for that particular agenda item?
No. On my part.
Okay.
No.
Okay, so we can add that one to the motion for the consent agenda. The next one, obviously skipping down to item A under public hearings for CUP FY 2022-5. Jeff Likes with ALC Architecture is requesting the use of the vehicle service operation located at 6543 North Glenwood Street. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to give public testimony in opposition to that particular item? Anyone on Zoom that anybody can see raising their hand? Say no. Is the applicant present?
I am on Zoom. I'm here.
Okay, great. Thank you, sir. Have you had the opportunity to review the findings of fact, conclusions of law, and draft decision, including draft conditions of approval?
We have. We have.
And do you agree and consent to these documents, including all conditions of approval?
We do.
Great. Thank you, sir.
Yep.
Next one was item B under public hearing, CUP FY 2022-0006. Will Longstreth with Ed Enterprises is requesting the use of a vehicle rental use at 2943 West Chinden Boulevard. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to give public testimony in opposition to this item? Okay. Is the applicant present?
Yes.
Great.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I would like to hear that one.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So we will hear that one then. Okay. All right. The next one is item C, CUP FY 2022-0007. John Hanson with Diamond Peak RV Rentals LLC is requesting the use of vehicle rentals at 5315 North Glenwood Street. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to give public testimony in opposition to this item? Okay. Is the applicant present for that one?
Present.
Great, thank you, sir. Have you had the opportunity to review the findings of fact, conclusions of law, and draft decision, including draft conditions of approval?
Yeah.
Great. Do you agree and consent to these documents, including all conditions of approval?
No, I think we would like to discuss.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, we will hear that one then. Item number D, CUP FY 2022-8, Roy Chester with Outer Impact is requesting the use of Industry Flex for suites 112 and 113 located at 107 East 46th Street. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to give public testimony in opposition to this item? Okay, is the applicant present?
We're here via Zoom.
Great, thank you. Have you had the opportunity to review the findings of fact, conclusions of law, and draft decision, including draft conditions of approval?
Yes,
And do you agree and consent to these documents, including all conditions of approval?
we do.
And does the staff have any reason to believe that this item needs to be discussed on the record?
Mr. Chairman, there's none.
Okay.
Sir.
Thank you. And does the commission have any discussion or concerns that they would like to get on the record for this item?
No.
Oops. And then the next item is one we've already discussed that will be continued until our date certain of February 16, 2022. And then the last item is also going to be continued till our date certain of February 16th, 2022. The last thing I want to mention regarding some of these that have been moved over to the consent agenda, we want to mention that we don't want anybody to feel slighted. There's a lot of work that goes into completing all these application documents and a lot of time that goes into it. We understand your efforts, and the commission, staff, and adjacent property owners feel that your application is appropriate as processed or conditioned. For those that are not moved to the consent agenda, please do not feel slighted either. We also appreciate your efforts and desires. However, there is an issue that needs to be formally discussed on the record. So that's the reason I just wanted to put that out there, that ending up on the consent agenda is not disrespectful of the time you've put into the application process. So thank you for that. So I think we're ready for a motion on the
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Brown.
I'm sorry, I apologize. I'm making it difficult on you, but I am getting ready, unless Mastiff's in there, to make a motion. However, the first subdivision, the one that I talked about, the Wandering Trails, I will not be here in February. I will be in Virginia. I would very much like to hear this. And I was wondering if there would be a problem. And I ask you to address that to Jenna. If on that particular one, we extended it to a date certain of March 16th. In other words, it would put it off for 2 months. I think we can do that, if I understand it, and that it still would not be required to go through the notification and everything else. If you think, or if Jenna gives us advice, maybe that's not well, and then that would be fine. So what are your thoughts?
Thank you, Commissioner Brown. I recognize that you, boy, have a lot of experience in some of the comments by the city engineer on that particular item. I'm just a little bit hesitant to hold an application and want to respect the applicant's efforts to keep their project moving as best as possible, I guess. Commissioner Wilde, any comments?
If Commissioner Brown had said April, I'd say no. March seems reasonable, so I'd be supportive of that.
Okay.
Okay, Mr. President. Then with that, I think I'm prepared to make a motion for the consent agenda. I move we approve the consent agenda consisting of the minutes of the last meeting, and add to that CUP FY 2022 number 4, Damon Beard requesting the use of a vehicle washing facility located 8200 West Chinden Boulevard. Moving and restating subdivision FY 2021 number 9, Wandering Trails, and moving that to a date certain of March 16th. moving CUP FY 2022, number 5. Jeff Likes with ALC Architecture requesting the use of a vehicle service located on Glenwood Street. Moving that to the consent agenda. Not moving CUP FY 2022, number 6. We will hear that. Not moving CUP FY 2022, number 7. We will hear that. Moving CUP FY 2022, number 8, Rochester with outer impact is requesting the use of Industry Flex for suites as listed on the agenda. Moving that to the consent agenda. And moving subdivision FY 2022, number 1. And that one will be moved to a date certain of February 16th. And moving subdivision FY 2021. I guess it's numbered. I wrote through it.
10.
It's number 10. Petra Point Townhouse. Combined preliminary final plat processing as a planned unit development. And moving that to a date certain of February 16th. I think that covers them. So I would move that.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda, say aye.
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 Aye. And the consent agenda is approved. So those of you that have been moved to the consent agenda, you are approved and free to no longer be here if you'd like. So we will move on to the public hearing portion of the meeting. I'll go through just real briefly what the hearing format is as we kind of get into these. I'll introduce the item and brief details. There will be a presentation by the applicant with a 15-minute time limit. And then the staff will deliver their report with the same 15-minute time limit. We'll have a public hearing. If there's any individual testimony, they will have 3 minutes to give public testimony. And then the applicant can come back up and give rebuttal testimony. Time is needed. At that point of covering everybody that wishes to give public testimony, we will close the public hearing. And then the commission members will discuss the item, and then we will deliver a motion and hopefully come to a decision on these items. And then if any further discussion after that, we'll do it. Okay. So the first item that we will hear will be CUP FY 2022-6. Will Longstrauss with Ed Enterprises is requesting the use of a vehicle rental use at 2943 West Chinden Boulevard. If the applicant would like to come up, a microphone on the podium up here, and state your name for the record, that would be terrific.
Thank you. Will Longstrauss, and it's WD Properties.
WD.
WD,
Thank
but
you.
that's fine. I appreciate your guys' time this evening, and Hannah, who has correspondence prior, while putting this together, so we appreciate her time on this as well. So this is at 2943 Chinden, and Hannah, can I pull that up, the location of this?
This doesn't work. It's this guy. Do you want this one?
Yeah, that's fine. That's a good place to start. So this is a Google Earth view of the 2943 Chinden property. This used to be a fireplace shop. It's the warming trend right there at the end of Chinden, just before you get on the connector heading towards downtown. And so our plan for this facility is to turn it into an enterprise rental car facility. And there's currently 2 parcels here. There's a larger square parcel that surrounds the building, and then a smaller kind of triangle shape towards the east, towards the connector, that's also included in this. And our plan will be to maintain the site, update the landscaping as required by Garden City, and update the interior of the building to more of an office setting for car rental. And then do minor updates to the facade of the building with paint. There'll be a vehicle access door for washing, pressure washing vehicles there on site. And then the one item with your initial review and consent documents that was presented by Hannah that we would like to contest and hear further is there's 2 curb cuts off of Chinden here, one close to 30th and the second farther down towards the east, kind of on that second parcel. And this being 2 parcels, that second curb cut towards the east, it almost landlocks that property if the 2 were to be closed. And in the initial staff report from Garden City, one of the consent items, it's number on page 9, note 13C, is to close both of those per ITD's recommendation to update the Chinden corridor. And so since we had that document, and I'll bring David Barry up here. David is another partner in this property, but in discussions with ITD, we would like to potentially save one of these curb cuts on Chinden, right? The farthest east curb cut, which is within or about 250 feet from 30th. I think we're fine losing the one closest to 30th. I think that's more of a safety issue close to 30th with traffic, pulling out to the right off of 30th. There's a median there. You can't really go left. But that first entrance there on Chinden, I'd be fine closing that if we could maintain the second entrance into the property, because it kind of landlocks that parcel. If we were ever to update that parcel further with some type of other development or sell it in the future, it would essentially be landlocked. And with that entrance being a right in, right out, with that median across Chinden, I don't know how much traffic impact it would have on there.
So thank you, commissioners. We did go through and have several discussions with ITD, and specifically we ended up talking with Sarah Ona. And after iterative discussions on that front, what we came to from an item that ITD could find acceptable was to make the entrance to, we'll call it the easternmost entrance, which is associated with 2909. So as you're looking at this image, it's the furthest along the right there. That curb cut is 220 feet away from the entrance at 30th Street. Per the IDAP 390342, technically it would need to be 250 feet in order to be fully compliant. ITD does not want that that entrance pushed further. They refer to the portion as you go past that curb cut towards the intersection of Fairview and the I-84 or I-184 on-ramp as kind of an acceleration corridor. So they talked about trying to limit access, but would allow that to be a entrance only, a right entrance only access point to be maintained. They also said that we want to discourage pedestrian access beyond that point. There is no sidewalk beyond that point, and they do not want to encourage pedestrian traffic at the intersection of Fairview and the I-184 on-ramp. So the report also notes for a placement to the east of that for a new extended landscape buffer and sidewalk. Those two items we don't feel are applicable because we don't want to encourage the pedestrian to go in that direction. We would want to encourage the pedestrian to stay safe and go to the west rather than the east, where there is nowhere for them to cross, nor any intersection for them to safely return back from, nor amenities that they would actually go to. So based on that, we did have a couple emails as well from the phone conversations with ITD to try to document this. And what we talked about with, again, ITD was to define that single entrance as a right entrance only, vacate the westernmost entrance that's closest to 30th Street in order to allow the parcel to still have an access to Chinden, but for exiting, the applicant or us would utilize 30th Street for returning on, or for patrons leaving the parcel.
Okay. Any questions of the applicant by the commission? Commissioner Brown.
Mr. Chairman, so thank you very much for that explanation. Saved me a bunch of problems. But you have talked and you've got indications from ITD that they'll be okay with keeping the far right one open.
Correct.
It will be not, it'll be right in, right out.
It's not possible to make a left. They
Understand? So it'll be a right in, right out. So if you're going east on Chinden, you'll be able to make a right in there. If you are exiting, you can also exit and make a right turn. Is that correct?
Their preference is for us to limit the exit. They'd like it to be an entrance only focus.
So it'll be a right in.
A right in, yes. So they ask for the development when we do the development for it to discourage access leaving. So they would like us to make the primary exit to the parcel to be on 30th, but to allow for an entrance off of Chinden.
Thank you.
Yep.
That's the only question I have.
Okay. Commissioner Wilde, any questions?
That answers my question too.
Thank you, Commissioner Wilde and Commissioner Brown. So can you hit me again with the Chinden sidewalk discussion you had with them?
Correct. So from a patron standpoint, they and we are in agreement with so 30th Street. The idea of a sidewalk is obviously connectivity. We want to connect a patron and a community together, but sidewalks are designed to connect patrons to amenities. If there's no amenity, it kind of negates the need and purpose for the sidewalk. Also, we want to encourage safety. So we are in agreement for what the city has requested for the sidewalk and landscape buffer along 30th, even though 30th does terminate into a 40-foot concrete barrier at I-84. We still feel that is going to be a beneficial improvement to the area, and we do not contest that. The sidewalk is existing to the parcel and to the property. Beyond the building to the east, we are looking to discourage pedestrians from going east of the building because there's no further amenities after that point. So we are looking to not create an additional sidewalk beyond the building. More specifically, similar to how it, I guess, apologies, I can't zoom directly in, but if you can see that there's two concrete sidewalks going to the building currently. What we would propose is to improve the landscaping in that area. From the east of this sidewalk, we would propose no new sidewalk being necessary because there is nowhere for the pedestrian to go after that location.
Okay. All right. Thank you. That helps. I appreciate it. Okay. Thank you. Again, you'll have a chance to come back up after, if there's any public testimony, give a rebuttal or whatever, but we'll move on to the staff report.
Can I ask one question before?
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. Commissioner Wilde.
I drive it every day, so I should know the answer, but I don't. There is no crosswalk at the end of Chinden before you approach the connector,
No,
correct?
there is not. And
There's not.
And there's two, very good question. So there are two large supports that Commissioner Brown would find good from an engineering perspective that are not going to move. It actually pinches down to about a 3-foot, I'll call it landscape stamped concrete area. And so if the pedestrian was going, say, for another 800 feet, first off, there's nowhere to go other than on I-84. But there's no way to actually build a sidewalk in the future without relocating a portion of the support structures for I-84 or 184, and not like.
Yeah, where my brain was going is if the sidewalk were extended, and again, I can't remember. If the sidewalk were extended and there were a crosswalk, there's a beautiful river about a block away. So there might be a good reason to have some pedestrian access, but I think I get what you're saying.
I think we want to
At
encourage.
this particular point.
Well, there's kind of that exit off the freeway there coming down that turns into Fairview, right? So that's kind of high speed and there isn't a crosswalk there. And then Chinden, right, they're getting onto the connector as they
There's
go
no
through
crosswalk
there and there's no
there.
crosswalk there at any of that.
Okay.
And I think it's 4 lanes in each direction, I want to
Chairman,
say.
can I approach?
Yes.
Right.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah, Commissioner
might-
Brown.
Just for.
what he's talking about, it runs into
thank you.
it runs into the foundation for the retaining wall because that's where the connector is. And then there's no sidewalk there. What there is, there's a stamped concrete piece that's probably 18 inches wide.
Yeah,
Yeah, they have a picture of it there.
Yeah.
There's no place for any pedestrian, anybody to go.
understood. Thank you.
Yeah.
This is already part of the record, isn't it? This is-
Yeah,
I think it was emailed to,
I don't know. I emailed it to Hannah. I don't know if it's part of the record, but
Okay.
it can be.
welcome to hold on to it.
In reality, that's just a summary. Yeah, I'm just going through right here with some visuals.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was part of the record.
Thanks.
Chairman, members of the commission, I actually get to present to you tonight, so looking forward to it. And thank you for the applicant for running through and introducing this item for a vehicle rental. And I'm going to limit my discussion to the sidewalk and curb cuts that we've already heard at some level. As you all know, as you sit on this board monthly, sidewalks are quite the issue within Garden City. And because of the way that Garden City originally developed with some deficiencies in the improvements for bikes and pedestrians, we do rely quite a bit on redevelopment to install those facilities. There are many reasons that sidewalks or bike and pedestrian facilities are something that the city is interested in having. It can be from economic development, sense of place, but in the eastern portion of the city, while there has been quite a bit of redevelopment, it is an area that is considered an area of persistent poverty. And so there are individuals that have limited access economically to be able to drive a vehicle. In addition, there are other constraints for individuals or desires. This particular application is in the Live, Work, Create and Green Boulevard Corridor land use designations of the comprehensive plan. The Green Boulevard Corridor designation is really looking at those arterials that run through the city, noting that they should be more multimodal and comfortable for those that are using them outside of a car, as well as addressing those that are within the cars going through the city. And then the Live, Work, Create district is everything from 36 East that's really targeting those that live and work within the area. There's a lot of artisan beverages that have located down there, artists. I do give presentations on occasion about transportation, and I note that the beverage industries did come to the city at one point in time and say, we get a lot of people asking to make it easier to get around and get to our business. And I had a friend call me up that was on a bike and said, how do I get to a business off of Chinden? I said, well, you're going to have to cross Chinden, and they didn't go. Funny enough, a new business that is developing right now on the south side of Chinden just came and had a very similar question to the city saying, can you please address Chinden? As a business owner, we do want it to be more pedestrian friendly. And he used the exact same anecdote that I use in my presentations, where he said people are choosing, his anecdote where individuals choosing not to go to businesses because of the constraints. The applicant has noted that they concur with putting sidewalk along 30th Street. I do just want to note that 30th Street, luckily for the applicant, does not dead end at the wall. It actually turns into Brown Street. And there are plans that are identifying getting individuals across Chinden. The city is slated at 33rd as a request for ITD and ACHD to take a good look at. Federal highways in a 2015 plan did note that between 30, I think it was 31st and 35th, there really did need to be a crossing, or maybe it was 33rd. And so here you can see there's access, whether it's legally designated access or not, may not, is a different issue, but up to Settlers Canal, and then each of the numbered streets, there's access off of Brown Street. And then Chinden, our problem child within Garden City. There have been a lot of studies on Chinden and a lot of recommendations. Some of you were involved with the 2006 comprehensive plan, and you can see since the 2006 comprehensive plan, there's been a whole lot of studying going on for Chinden. Following the 2006 comprehensive plan, in 2008, Garden City hired a consultant to create a vision consistent with the comprehensive plan. And in 2015, there was the federal highway study that was actually, it was specifically looking to constraints for bikes and pedestrians on Chinden. And it was sent back to Secretary Fox as Idaho's example of where there are some constraints to pedestrians and bike facilities. And really what they found is even when there's sidewalks in place, people will walk back in the asphalt areas because it's uncomfortable the way of the current design. And so in many ways that design without all the studies behind it may be the exact way that Chinden probably should redevelop. With that being said, traditionally there are a lot of constraints on state facilities that are urbanized because of statutory requirements of how state funding is utilized. And then the cities aren't their own street department, as you very well know. And so Ada County Highway District does not spend money on state facilities. And so there is just a slightly more difficult constraint on urbanized state highways. And the city has been working for the last couple of years collaboratively with ITD on how we can address Chinden. Most recently, last year, we applied for a RAISE grant, trying to do a plan for the whole of Chinden for multimodal bikes and pedestrians. But for now, that the access management is a point that did come out of us trying to work collaboratively together, where they provided recommendations to the city to close access points along Chinden that either do not meet their regulatory standards or were never permitted in the first place. And then this is not the proposed location. It is Chinden, but it comes from one of those studies, A Corridor for All, that was just discussing why people are leapfrogging across Chinden. And it's because to go find a signalized crossing, they may have to walk quite a ways. And as already has been discussed, right there off of the connector where it is not a formalized crosswalk, there is a signal where individuals can expect that traffic will stop. And so one of the reasons that staff presumes that when you do see individuals that are walking under the overpass, it may be to get to that crossing to be able to cross down into Fairview. Or as Commissioner Wilde did note, you could jump across and potentially even go up to the river. And then there are always unexpected users. Here we do see somebody just doing a Google drive-by. I noticed that somebody was right adjacent to the property that does have that wider before it tapers down to the 3 feet landscaping the right-of-way. So there are a number of conditions of approval related to the sidewalk. Conditions 5, 6, and 7 all note different treatments that could be utilized if the commission decides that a sidewalk is appropriate adjacent to Chinden. And then condition number 14 includes requirements for both the sidewalk on 30th Street as well as sidewalk on Chinden. And then the next.
Sorry, Jenna, can you repeat those? 5, 6, and 7 relate to the sidewalk. What were the other ones?
Number 14.
Thank you.
And then just to note, so you don't have to look it up, 5, 6, and 7, staff is working with ITD. Garden City did not receive the RAISE grant this year. And so in the interim, we're trying to figure out as redevelopment occurs, what ITD would permit as a design treatment. And that is why there are 3 different options, because they need to fully vet what that may be. The one that we have been discussing is the number 5. But as Mr. Jason Brinkman with ITD noted on January 4th to me, is the devil is in the details. And so they may come back and say, number 5 is not okay, but number 6 is. And so that's why there's an option of 3 different design treatments. I might suggest that they're written in order of preference as well. And then this is directly from the ITD recommendations, that report that they submitted a couple of years ago to Garden City for the access closures. And then this is from the RAISE grant that we worked with together. And it's just emphasizing why it might be important to close some of those access points onto Chinden, demonstrating that there is significant potential crash reduction with every single level of closures that you can get to. And it should be noted that 1.3% of all bicycle and pedestrian crashes in Ada County occur on Chinden and Garden City. And that's from crash data from 2016 to 2020. But the site certainly has constraints where it is. So these are the two properties in question, as the applicant noted, and then they're requesting to close this and leave this access open. And so condition number 13 tries to address that, where I apologize, the numbering did get messed up on this and I couldn't figure out how to change it. But the item number C to 13 does have some allowance as drafted to allow for the applicant to maintain a curb cut onto Chinden with an affidavit noting that they don't have access to that, the current curb cut on 30th Street. And then also from documentation from ITD recommending that egress be allowed onto Chinden. In the draft that has gone to the commission for your review, it also notes documentation from ACHD that an additional curb cut onto 30th Street is infeasible. I started thinking about that and I would recommend that that's not a good condition. And the reason that I would recommend that that's not a good condition is that I am under the understanding, and I know that we have an expert on the commission that may be able to correct me if I'm incorrect, but I'm under the impression on local streets that ACHD may not have the guidance to determine whether or not a new curb cut should be precluded. And the way that that existing curb cut is, I don't know if you can see it. Running from about here to here would start getting pretty close to the intersection and also be quite awkward coming in where the existing building is. And so I might suggest that if the commission chooses to keep this condition in, that there's a potential to remove the documentation requirement from ACHD. And also note that as drafted, this is not an or, that there's a period at each of those. And so there may be discussion from the commission there. And with that, I stand for questions.
Commissioners, any questions of staff? Commissioner Brown?
That was a really good explanation of what you put together, Mr. Chairman. And in fact, it changed my mind on what I was going to do, what you just presented overall. And I'll share most of that for when we discuss it. And I'll say, but I do have a question about the last thing that we talked about. What are you you're suggesting that on 30th Street? I think what you're saying is that you're recommending that we should allow them to move the curb cut, but dependent upon what they can negotiate with ACHD, because ACHD does have in the regulation, I can't remember how this says, it's an arterial that you're going on to. There is a distance that's in their policy, and I don't recall what that is. So I think what you're suggesting in that case is that we rejigger what we're saying there so that it allows them to have a curb cut there, so they can come, because obviously they're going to have that. That's the main access into the whole place. Because they want almost very few cars are going to be making a ride in. Only the ones that go by 30th Street for some reason. Okay, that's assuming that we keep the other curb cut on Chinden. So I think what we want to say is we want you're recommending we allow them to have a curb cut on 30th, but they adjust where the location is and they get the best location that they can get from ACHD, or that what we're saying?
Chairman, I think not exactly, but I think that's probably a better way to address it. Where I was going with it is there's that existing curb cut, but looking at the record of survey that was provided to the city, it looks like there was a vacation of the previous right of way. And there's no documentation that there's an easement for access. Staff was assuming that there is an easement just based on the applicant's letter back in response to Ms. Beal's staff report, where they talk about how they would have to go clear around if that right in, right out wouldn't be allowed onto Chinden. But it's noting that if there's an additional curb cut in addition to the existing, that ACHD weigh on that rather than move the existing curb cut. But I did not think through that either, that is a potential to relocate that curb cut.
Okay, I think I have an idea on how we may be able to address that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Commissioner Wilde, any questions for staff?
I don't think I have any further questions. I either have a case of deja vu, or I've been on this commission long enough that we've debated this same curb cut on an application a long time ago. Maybe you remember that. I don't. I wish I had the benefit of a better memory, but I don't have any questions.
Thank you.
Where is the, potentially irrelevant, but I'm curious though, where is the nearest crosswalk to the west?
Chairman, it would be at 36th Street.
36th.
Correct.
So there's not one, just for the sake of specificity, there's not one to get to the Riverside Hotel nearby.
Not at this time. The city does adopt annual transportation needs requests that gets enveloped to ACHD's 5-year work plan. And also goes, so there is communication from the city, as well as a recommendation from Federal Highways to install one. And the city has pinpointed 33rd Street as the desired location. That would be reviewed by engineering to determine if that's the exact right spot, if and when that crossing would elevate to funding.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. We will open the public hearing here. If there is anybody that has signed up to provide public testimony for this particular application. Okay. Is there anybody out there on Zoom that wanted to provide public testimony for this item? Okay, I don't see any hands raised. Okay, so the applicant can come back up and have a few minutes or more to provide any rebuttal testimony to anything that's been discussed up to this point.
This one.
Perfect. Commissioners, Jenna, thank you for your time and consideration on this. One item I just wanted to kind of provide a little more detail on, and when Jenna was talking about the curb cut to the off of 30th Street, we agree it's kind of a unique curb cut situation. Our intent with the construction of the new sidewalk and landscape buffer on 30th is to not relocate the power line with it. We want to make the curb cut as far from 30th as far from the intersection as possible, but still on our property. And an item that we have to come into consideration with is there is the existing Idaho power line pole there that goes right about the property line. And that's the reason why there's kind of a unique curb cut setup for the property to the south, as well as what will become the primary access, both coming and going for this parcel just to the north of this. So we will look to provide a compliant new curb cut there that is, satisfies the city's expectations, but it's going to, unfortunately, it will not line up with this alleyway without completely relocating the existing power. And we just wanted to just make everyone aware of that at this time, so that as we go through design review, at least it's been initially brought to people's attention. In addition, again, look forward to providing the landscape curb and gutter and sidewalks around that area to improve the connectivity. And you are correct, that 30th is not dead end to the road itself, just ends and then continues. I guess it would be to the west.
It kind of loops around there.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, the sidewalk ends into the wall, but
Into
the
the wall.
roadway itself goes. So I apologize.
Then the only other thing I would add on the staff report is that the item 13C, where it talks about that second curb cut, and you noted it in your report where it's an and situation for those two conditions rather than or situation. So as drafted. So if we could push for an or, right, if we get ITD's approval for the right entry at that curb cut, that's what we'd be pushing for, rather than an and on that 13C, which is regards to access back to 30th. So again, why I'm on a staff parcel.
ITD also did, again, sorry, just Sarah at ITD did note from an owner perspective, because we are the same owner, they're evaluating it as a single parcel. So even if there was an access agreement, she said that wouldn't matter, that they are evaluating the access to Chinden based off of it being a joint parcel. No further comments on our end, Commissioner.
So just for the sake of clarity, so where the or is to replace the and is 13B2.
I think it's 13C. I think it's noted as B, but as she mentioned, there was kind of two Bs, right, or two A's. I think it's the third one down, basically.
So
Right, two A's. So it would have been, it's B, but it's the one highlighted, right? So it would have been C. Right.
Okay.
And then we would gather that ITD documentation for submittal.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Oh, Commissioner Brown.
first of all, so that we need to clarify a couple things, Mr. Chairman. And then I think we'll do it. It has to do with this. If we chose to stick with the conditions, the 1, 5, 6, and 7 that had to do with the sidewalk, you would understand that implication of what she said. If we decide that we're going to agree with what the staff is recommending, you would have to put in the format that ITD agreed to a sidewalk that would go to where the light is. You understand that if we do that rather than what you're suggesting, correct?
Under the overpass?
No, how, I guess I'm a little confused how we could build a sidewalk.
If we go with the staff's recommendation, we're talking about Chinden, all right? You're asking that we not go with the way they have written it, which requires you to put a 12-foot sidewalk in there that would go to where the light is. In other words, it would go to the end of the property. Okay, and that gives you 3 possibilities of how you could accommodate that depending upon what ITD would agree to. You understand that? What would be the impact if we decide we're gonna leave that requirement on Chinden to you?
Correct. As we mentioned earlier, we would push for stopping the sidewalk at the property so that it doesn't make
At the
it
at the
connected.
building.
Right, at the building, where the current sidewalk.
I understand that. I understand that, but that is not what is in the staff report right now. The essence of what Jenna was talking about, and then when she was explaining about what the plan was. But we have a plan that this was negotiated quite a while ago, and I participated in it, which would envision what eventually we want to happen on Chinden. And so you have requested to deviate from what the staff has recommended. I'm trying to get your feeling for how much that will impact you if we don't agree to what you're requesting.
And I appreciate you bringing that up because I think that was a little unclear until Chairman Brown, you bring it up. But originally, we would be okay and ample to install sidewalk and landscaping per your requirements up to the property where the current sidewalk is. But beyond, as we stated before, the connectivity to the rest of that corridor under the overpass and then to that larger intersection
And
at Fairview would be. what we
Jenna,
wanna
can you
change in the
indicate
staff report.
what would be envisioned if we went along with what the staff recommendation is? So that I want us to make sure that we understand if we do that, where the end of the sidewalk that they would have to construct is. Is that consistent with what he's stating?
Commissioner Brown, would that mean basically reconstructing the entrance that's there in more or less the same location, but to have it as, I guess what the staff has noted with the landscape buffer and detached sidewalk associated with it?
Yes, that would be a sidewalk, yes, but instead of terminating at the second sidewalk, right now there are two sidewalks that
Correct.
go to the front of that building. By the way, that building used to be a restaurant before with a fireplace, and I used to eat lunch there quite often. So I'm
Magic
familiar
chef.
with the site. Anyway, you're requesting that we terminate it at that second sidewalk as you're going east.
Correct.
Staff is saying no, they're recommending no, that we don't do that, that we require you to build a sidewalk, and they give 3 different configurations in there, depending upon what ITD is willing to go along with. That would it encompass, it would go beyond where that second curb cut is, which you're indicating if we go along with that, and that's the way it's been written, since you've already talked, and that's my preference of what you've negotiated with ITD, and apparently you'll be able to confine that, but the sidewalk will go past that, if I understand it, that will be constructed, and it'll go to the end of that parcel, which is right almost where, if it's not it, there's a light underneath the bridge there. Okay, and that's what the staff is recommending. And if I'm misinterpreting that, I would like for one of the members of the staff to fix me right now. I don't want to be leading anybody astray.
Commissioner Brown, I hear what you're saying on that front. In previous discussions with ITD, it sounds like their preference is slightly different than Garden City's on that. So I guess my suggestion would be that if ITD has a preference for that particular intersection, that we either, as part of the condition of approval, that Garden City notes that we'd have to get input from ITD on the pedestrian connectivity of that. And if ITD was okay with the sidewalk terminating at the location where they did not want to encourage pedestrian connectivity, then that could be considered acceptable or satisfactory.
We could perhaps put something together that, subject to what ITD is willing to allow, okay? We'll put some kind of wording in there if we decide to do it that way. All right, now let's talk about I want to make sure we understand what we're doing on 30th Street.
Okay.
Because that one is also going to have to be modified a little bit, and I appreciate you pointing out where that power pole is. moving the power pole would be expensive, I guarantee it. And so what I understand what you're requesting is to leave the curb cut that's there. That's the one that let's call it to the south, okay? But have another one that will be to the north, a new one that's to the north of the power pole. Is that correct?
That's not our parcel. It's a different owner.
That's
To the south,
to the north.
Oh,
towards the river.
sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
You're gonna wind up with two curb cuts. Right? One new one and one is the old one.
Would it be better to just enlarge the current curb cut? Because if you zoom in, it's pretty small as it is. I would rather.
So you
just
have only
enlarge it.
one, you have one, so you're gonna enlarge it.
Mhm.
Correct.
I think that's a better option for the existing power, and
We can probably work up some kind of wording that would allow
it could
that.
be a two.
But you need, the people that have to approve all of this is not ITD, it's ACHD.
ACHD.
The curb cuts on 30th Street, and that's why I say, whatever we come out with, we're gonna have to have some wording
Okay.
that says that subject to whatever ACHD requires with regard to the distance from the intersection.
Well, and as we
Okay.
update the sidewalk along 30th,
Right,
it'll be
Yeah.
pretty easy to make it a little bigger, right? Because what we,
understand, but you gotta have to, you're gonna be working in ACHD right away. You're gonna wind up having to get a permit from them to work in it, and it'll have conditions on it. And they'll have inspectors come out and inspect what you're going to do. And so they're the people who will have to make the determination when you're putting the plans through. You have your engineer draw up your plans that will have proof where that can exactly be located, okay?
Understood.
Assuming we go along with that, okay?
Yep, that makes sense.
All right, thank you.
I just have one more quick question.
You go ahead.
for Janet. Is the staff recommendation to extend that sidewalk all the way to the light under the overpass currently, or is it to stop it at the end of the property line? So
Go ahead.
I believe it's to stop it at the end of the property line, but just for clarity, we request to stop it at the second sidewalk.
Correct. So Commissioner Brown, if you can see on that image, I think there, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong, my interpretation of this whole thing is the sidewalk along Chinden is to terminate, well, you could use that one, I guess. Where's the property
This,
line?
where the cursor is here.
So
kind of in the
that's where
corner.
there's not a light there, but that's
Right.
where
the
you,
property line
Yeah.
ends. And we would request that instead of extending it there, that it is extended to the current sidewalk condition.
So it's not to the light, it's to
Correct.
the end of the property line.
Right.
And that's right where the, looks like the pavers begin anyway. Is that correct?
Right.
Okay.
That
Okay.
prompts me to have another question then.
Yeah, go ahead,
Leave that
Commissioner
on
Brown.
there. Do those pavers come right to your property?
Just about, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, there's a small dirt, about 10 feet. Just where that landscape area, it really is the transition. The property corner ends right here and the paper started. It's about 10 foot.
Okay.
Pretty close.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Wilde.
I hear what you're saying and I hear what Jen is saying. Why are you proposing to stop the sidewalk at the building and not at the curb cut that you now want to make a right in, right out?
Because there's nowhere for the pedestrian to go.
I get that, but you're gonna have pedestrians on your property walking around renting cars.
Correct. And they'll be walking around on the property, but the sidewalk is the perimeter. So more just to limit the disturbance. Commissioner Brown brought up, stormwater and other items in previous discussion. What we're trying to do is try to minimize the grading on site for this. And so the more that we actually disturb for that, we're going to be triggering additional items from a development standpoint. And we're trying to make sure that we can actually make our 30th approach and everything that's going to be seen by the public as they approach the property as beneficial as possible. This at the end there, really you're just looking straight into the I-84 or 184 overpass, and we just didn't feel that there's benefit for that. But obviously, long run, sidewalks are a beneficial part for a community, and we understand.
And it is hardscaped currently, right? It's asphalt and has that red stamp. It just doesn't have your buffer, right?
It's got a little red brick buffer.
Mhm.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. So at that point, then, the public hearing is closed, and we will move on to discussion amongst the commission about this application. Commissioner Brown, thoughts?
Okay, first of all, I want to really thank everybody, and I'm really glad that my premonition that we needed to hear this came out to be true. And like I said, I changed my mind in a couple of things. So let me start with my thoughts. So first of all, I'm very familiar, as I indicated, of the whole parcel. And I'm really commending, I think this is gonna fix an eyesore. That place has been empty for about 4 years.
Agreed.
And but initially I was going to say that we needed to change our mind on the curb cut and on Chinden, and go along with the recommendation that the applicant had of trying to get ITD to allow them to keep one. And the primary reason is a safety reason. And they did a little analysis on the resubmittal that explained if somebody missed and intended to go to the business, but they didn't turn right at 30th, and you didn't have a curb cut there for them to make a right in like is going to be allowed now. Apparently, they got to go across 3 lanes of traffic in order to make a loop that would come back across and make what I consider a really dangerous crossing of Chinden. So I was going to say that we should back off of the original requirement and in fact, in so much as to support them with some kind of going back to ITD, but it appears to me like we don't have to, because ITD has agreed to it. So I'm very much in favor of the way it's now worded. And that would be, I don't know what requirement it is that allows for them to keep one curb cut. It's the one that they're talking about. And I'm very much in favor of thinking about it of what ITD is saying is it would be limited to right in, because it solves that problem of people, because you will have people, they don't wake up until they get past that intersection. I guarantee you that will be wanting to come in there. The second issue that I want to address and my thinking and initially I was thinking that I was going to be in favor of what they were requesting of terminating the sidewalk, but I changed my mind after I listened, because I am familiar of the plans that Jenna talked about, and someday we're going to get all Chinden redeveloped and we're going to have a really nice looking thing. And when we do, we're going to want to have all that connectivity. And as we know, it's really difficult when you get a chance to get it if you don't get it. And so what I'm in favor of is the way that they have written up, the staff has written it up now. I think it's under conditions 5, 6, and 7. It gives 3 possibilities of the type of sidewalk and what can be put in there based upon what ITD will allow on their right of way. And so what I would be in favor of, as us proving with regard to that, is pretty much leaving it like the staff says. If I understand it, that will result in a sidewalk that comes up to the end of their property. We can't really require them to put something that's not on their property. And unfortunately, that'll apparently, but for the time being, for there, I guarantee you, there are probably people from time to time that walk down across there and they get on that patterned brick, patterned concrete that's on there. And so that will give it for the time being. And then someday, hopefully there will be a crossing there. Probably where the light is, or the light might be moved back and forth a little bit. But I think we ought to go ahead and stay with our requirements at that one. Now over on 30th Street, I think we ought to change the wording a little bit. I think the wording should say that it allows them to modify the existing curb cut consistent with what their plans are and what ACHD will allow with regard to the location of the curb cut. And that allows them, that wording would allow them to make it wider or what they had to do with it. And not us be so specific about it, but make it clear that we're allowing it sort of do what ITD suggests with regard to whether or not there's a right of way there or not. And so, and beyond that, I would say we would approve all the other requirements that Hannah wrote in there.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Brown. Commissioner Wilde.
Thank you. I agree for the most part with Commissioner Brown. Again, as I mentioned, I see both sides. I know that stretch, and that is a walkable portion for a good distance until you get under the overpass, at which point it's pretty darn narrow. And it's not pedestrian friendly. It's not bike friendly. But the comp plan that was written, and as Commissioner Brown's mentioned, we're not necessarily talking about what we need today, we're talking about what we might need in the future. So I'd love to split the baby and propose sidewalk up to the curb cut, but that'll leave a no man's land to the end of the property too. So I guess I am supportive of what Commissioner Brown's said with regard to all three of these items. I think a right in, right out is appropriate for that second curb cut on Chinden. I think you're right. People will miss the turn, and that will probably be used more to access the property than the 30th Street. That's my guess. Right? People are more familiar with that curb cut anyway than turning in to the property at 30th. So.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Wilde. My thoughts are in agreement with everything both commissioners have said as well. The only other thing I would add is the sidewalk discussion just continues to eat at me a little bit, because to Commissioner Wilde's point, to say that for, I guess, a highway agency to say that, we don't want to attract, or whatever the wording was, pedestrians, along part of our highway, our city street, it's really an urban highway. I think that statement lacks a lot of vision about where Garden City is heading from the standpoint of development and urbanization. There's going to be a lot more pedestrians in our city going forward. But
their mission is to move cars.
I understand. I understand
that's
that.
why they're discouraging.
Yeah, there's going to be pedestrians, and then I just immediately go to safety, and Yeah, you're right. But anyway, I just wanted to say that, but I'm in agreement, supportive of the application with maintaining that curb cut on Chinden, the easternmost curb cut. And then pretty much just following the draft conditions of approval for 30th. So I think we might be ready for a motion.
Commissioner Brown, why don't you make that?
All right, I'll give it a stab. Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Brown.
I move we approve CUP/FY 2022 number 6. Will Longstaff with ED Enterprises is requesting the use of a vehicle and rental use at 2943 West Chinden Boulevard. In accordance with all the requirements written by the staff with regard to the sidewalk, giving 3 alternatives on Chinden. The sidewalks and the integrated landscaping that's part of that. And with regard to modifying the language with regard to the curb cut and sidewalk that's on 30th Street to read that the existing curb cut location and specific design can be modified to reflect the engineer's design and whatever restraints ACHD places on the placement of the location.
Did you,
And in accordance with findings of fact, I forgot what the different things we're supposed to include. It's in your cheat sheet over there. Findings of fact. Findings of fact, conclusions of law, conditions of approval.
did you
Go ahead.
address the curb cut?
Yes.
Okay. Second.
Okay, all those in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. You are approved for your application. Thank you for your time and efforts with this.
It's going to be great. Thank you for coming.
Yep.
Mr. Chairman,
Will the other?
how about a
enterprise
10-minute
location
break?
close?
So there's one on 27th.
Yeah,
Yeah, in Boise.
that'll stay open.
No, that one. That'll relocate that.
Good. Bring them to Garden City.
But the other Garden City one will remain open as well. The other.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Thanks.
Thanks again, gentlemen. We will take a 10-minute break. We'll fire back up at 1912.
Look at you, military.
It's just what it says.
Oh, that's cool. I'm excited about that.
Hello?
At 27th, because that's the enterprise I use now.
Okay.
So I haven't used the, I forgot there was one day. I can't remember the army.
Yeah.
Takes right, so I would turn around.
Quick question, if I may.
Muted everything.
On that one?
I don't know. Let's see.
Is that Hannah? Hannah, quick question. Can you hear me? Hannah?
Oh, it had nothing to do with that? Oh, okay.
Marty and Jory, did you have a question just during this recess?
We were just curious, did you move our subdivision to the next meeting?
Yeah. We did move your application to the February 16th planning and zoning hearing date. So you guys could address the design review committee's comments and concerns.
So we got pushed because of yesterday's DR meeting.
Can you repeat that?
So we got pushed from this meeting because of the way the DR meeting went yesterday. Is that correct?
There were a handful of reasons why. So, yes, but it has been moved.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
That question. She was asking. So, Jenna.
Yes, sir.
I should have asked you for this years ago. Thank you. It's much better.
My apologies that we didn't give it 2 years ago. My goodness.
It's much better, even for the people that are on Zoom.
Oh, wonderful.
And look at streets that are. Yeah. My kids call State Street Rec Road. Rec Road. They don't even see State Street. Are we taking Rec Road home? Really? Yeah, we're taking Rec Road. Although the speaking of Sixth Street has been reduced. They reduced it by 5 miles. Yeah. Hey, a little bit helps. Yeah. What's next? So was JBI on the phone the whole darn time? Didn't realize. Yeah, I think so.
Okay, we are back in session here. We'll move on to item number C under the new business header, CUP FY 2022-007. John Hanson with Diamond Peak RV Rentals LLC is requesting the use of vehicle rentals at 5315 North Glenwood Street. So just again, like the last one, we'll hear from the applicant first for 15 minutes, and then we'll go to the staff report for 15 minutes after that, then a public hearing. So if the applicant wants to come up, we'll get going. How you doing tonight?
I'm doing all right.
Good.
This is a new experience for me. We've never done this before. So my name's John Hanson. This is my business partner, Eric Spencer. And we own a small RV rental business called Diamond Peak RV Rentals. And we're looking for a place to move our business to. And this property from a layout perspective works great for us. Some of the potential conditions for approval are challenging for us, honestly. And so that's what we're really here to talk about, is if those can be waived, if to allow us to do business there. The site is gravelled currently and fenced with chain link and barbed wire. And we recognize that those two things are not encouraged in the comprehensive plan. But if you look around that site, the car wash has barbed wire, the fairgrounds has barbed wire, the transportation department has barbed wire, all within eyesight of the lot that we're on. So we don't feel that would really detract from what people are going to see anyway from that whole area. We want to basically have a place to put the trailers in between rentals. So and the motorhomes. And so the renters come and pick them up there. Typically, they do not leave a vehicle. Once in a great while, but Most of them are travel trailers and they're hooking up to the trailer and they're driving away in the vehicle they came in. We currently do about 150 rentals a year, give or take. And they average 5 days in length. And so what we're hoping to be able to do is to use this property to have the, we don't transact financial business there. That's all done online through our website. The booking, the payment, everything is done previous to them coming to the lot. So there really isn't walk-in business there either. They would show up, hook up to the trailer, get the walkthrough on how to use it, and then they go on their vacation, and then they come back on average 5 days later and drop it off. We recognize that we can't wash the trailers on our lot. And we agree to that. There's a car wash right next door, and our intent would be that we just hook up to them, pull them over to the car wash them there, and then come right back into our lot. We do want to add a sewer connection there, and we have talked to a contractor about that. We understand what the costs are. We know we would have to get permitted to do that. We get that. We also have a propane tank that we fill the RV propane tanks with, and we put that in the proposal as well. We would like to move that on site. We would not sell propane individually to the customer. That isn't our business. It's just used to fill our own tanks in between rentals, so they're full when the renter takes them out. Anything I'm missing? So basically there's a lot of items in the potential conditions for approval, and I'm sure that staff is going to go through all of those. I guess we can address maybe some individual questions about those afterwards, if that makes more sense. But suffice to say, I think that the majority of those we would like to leave the lot as is. And as it relates to the front landscaping, I know the owner, we don't own the property. We have an agreement to lease if we get the conditional use permit done. And he said that he, a few years ago, had to redo the whole front to Garden City standards, but now it appears that maybe we're not, the front of that lot is not meeting those standards. So we were a little bit confused by that, but I guess we could address that individually if we had to do that.
Okay, well, thank you. Commissioners, any questions for the applicant?
Can you address?
Commissioner Wilde.
Can you address what conditions specifically you would like consideration for or waiver, as you said?
So the chain link, we have a challenge with the employee on site averaging 15 hours a week in the busy season, May to September. That's no problem, but the rentals in Idaho are not near as plentiful in the wintertime. We do get a few rentals for spare bedrooms, things like that during the holidays or different times, but the rentals, the majority of our business is done May through September. I didn't completely understand that no more than 20% of the site may be dedicated to storage. We're not offering storage for rent. The units there are not because they're being stored. They're there because they're available for rent. Then we have the tree requirements, item 9, and the perimeter landscaping requirements, which if you look around, I don't think the other sites have perimeter. This has landscaping in the front and the rear. If we had to landscape the sides, it's only 0.75 acres and it would make it unusable for us. The size would be too small to be able to do what we need to do and to have the proper turning radius and the 20-foot drive-through. We understand that we would need a permit for utility work. The wheel restraints for the parking areas, we didn't understand that either. There's a fence. There's no way it can encroach upon another property because the whole property is fenced. That's item 14. So, and we do want to put 2 small sheds on the property also, but they're 8 by 12. They're very small. They just hold our linens and a few generators and things like that we rent.
So I got number 8, and I got number 14. Were there other conditions that?
Fair to say 2 and 3?
2, 3,
Sorry, yeah, I missed 2.
6.
6.
And I think 8 is met if you look at the gross, because if you look at the front and the back, I'd have to do the math, but I think that at least 5% of the total is landscaped if you count the front of the property and the back of the property.
And sometimes the conditions are written not necessarily to reflect what needs to be done. If it's 5% and there's already 6% landscaping, that
Right.
condition's met.
Okay.
So, okay, thank you.
Commissioner Brown.
Mr. Chairman, I have some questions for the applicant, but I want to take him up on his suggestion. I'm going to wait till after the staff talks to us and he's up here for rebuttal.
Sounds good.
I have, I guess, one additional question.
Sure.
So this isn't in the drafted conditions of approval or anywhere in the staff report. It's my own thing.
Mhm.
But is it possible that if this is approved, could that propane tank be placed in the back of the lot? I'm hung up with the fact that that's pretty close to Glenwood. And if somebody in the wintertime is zipping down Glenwood and loses it at 40 miles an hour, and I know there'll be bollards around it, and I think you said that in your application, but it's close to the sidewalk. The way I understood
It's
ideally placing it in the back of the lot is what I'm getting.
okay. So it's not ideal for the layout that we designed, but I'm sure that we could go back and figure out a way to accommodate that if we can work through all these other issues.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Thank you, gentlemen.
Yep.
Now we'll move to the staff report.
Chairman, members of the commission, you get me again. And I don't have much to share here, but I'll go ahead and share my screen. As already introduced by the chairman, this is for a vehicle rental located at 5315 North Glenwood, conditional use permit, fiscal year 22, number 7. So there are, I apologize, I was writing down the conditions really quickly. But the staff report did identify a couple of issues with this application. Not that it's not a great business by any means, but the first issue that the staff did identify was the comprehensive plan designations of this property. The Garden City Comprehensive Plan identifies this particular site is the Green Boulevard corridor. As already noted tonight, the intent to readdress the arterials to allow for comfortable multimodal access and tree-lined boulevards. And then it's really the other two designations that may be in conflict with this potential application model, or this application model. And the first of which is the TOD designation that looks to have land uses that are supportive of transit. So high employment, high activity, high living areas. So the transit is supported. And then the second of which is it's part of the future planning area, specifically designated as a potential downtown heart for the city. And then the second issue that some of the conditions that the applicant brought up are related to the business model for the requested rental, in that the applicant does not, the model does not intend to have employees on site. And so the staff report did note concern that it not be a vehicle storage area, as that's not allowed within the zoning district. And so that is the reason that there are some of the conditions that are found in there, including having an employee for an average of 15 hours per week. That condition is just trying to bring some of that life and make that use vehicle rental act like the code contemplates a vehicle rental acting versus a vehicle storage. 15 hours is not anything technical. It was just a kind of a grab at and just having some life there. And to the other items, in that it can't be a storage yard, code identifies any location that's more than 20% of a site dedicated to storage is defining that as a storage yard. And so that's where that condition came from. Chain link is a non-compliant, and barbed wire are non-compliant fencing types. And then the 5% of the landscaped area, Commissioner Wilde was absolutely correct. When Ms. Beal did her review of this project, because of not having a full landscape plan, site plan, she was unable to tell what some of the site conditions are. And some of those conditions may have already been met, but they're in there just to meet the code requirements. And most of the other conditions, so the perimeter landscaping, is a condition that comes directly out of making this particular use compliant with 82C42 for vehicle rentals. So that perimeter landscaping is a result of the use that's being requested, not in general that there's non-compliant or deficiencies related to the sidewalk or landscaping that were previously installed. I think I covered all. One thing that's not noted is discussion related to propane, the propane tank. There aren't any conditions that are in the draft potential decision document. The commission could, provided that that is something they wanted to include, request that it be located towards the rear. And staff had also identified that North Ada County Fire and Rescue District approval be required. That would be required anyway, whether or not it's conditioned. And then screening the tank from view and noting specifically that the tank is accessory to the use and must be removed if the use ceases. And with that, I stand for any questions.
Commissioners, any questions for staff? Commissioner Brown?
Mr. Chairman, I have a question. It has to do with this issue of what kind of a facility this is. And then thank you for clarifying where the 20% came from. Understanding that if we were to decide that indeed this essentially is a storage facility for mobile homes and trailers, then it would not be permitted in this zone. Is that correct?
Chairman, Commissioner Brown, that is correct. A storage yard would not be a permitted use in the zoning district.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's all.
Commissioner Wilde?
Jenna, this application seems very similar to an application we heard within the last 12 months for a Chinden construction equipment rental site. Similar issues related to fencing because they wanted their heavy machinery fenced and protected. Similar issues about somebody on site, even though, like this applicant, the person's only there infrequently to help them check it out, get it out, maybe lock up the gate again. Do you recall what we did with that? On those two issues, we accommodated that applicant in some way. Can you recall?
Chairman Commissioner Wilde, the fencing issue, the applicant had noted a desire to build a phase 2 and include a structure. And at that point in time, a condition is in that decision document requiring that the fence, maybe, is it with the phase 2 that the fencing's, oh, I take that back. The fencing is required to be compliant. And then there are individuals on site, but do you remember, Hannah, the exact condition? Hannah will be looking that up.
So the 15, I'll just double back while Hannah's looking that up. The 15 hours that's not a code requirement. We Garden City want to have an active site and not have this look like and feel like a storage site.
Chairman Commissioner Wilde, that's very well put. It was trying how to come up with conditions to differentiate. There's certainly no code requirement that there be somebody a certain amount of time on site.
Okay. Thank you.
And thank you. I'll stand for any other questions while Ms. Beal is looking that up, or when she finds it, I'll let her address the committee.
Yeah, I didn't have any questions, so thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we will move to the public hearing portion of this application. If there is anybody that would want to provide public testimony for this, anybody in Zoom? Oh, Don is raising his hand. Don, you can go ahead and please provide your full name, please.
Sure, Don May. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, we can hear you. You could proceed
Great.
with your testimony.
Yes, sir. I just wanted to say that if no business is permitted or is transacted on the site, then by definition, essentially, it's a storage facility. The other thing I wanted to mention is that long-term Expo Idaho is going to be redeveloped and really become the Garden City's crown jewel. And so it's very important. It's always important to adhere to the comprehensive plan, but I think that this particular location, it's even more important to adhere to the comprehensive plan. Thank you very much, Commissioner, and everyone there. Thank you for your time.
You're welcome. Thank you for your time and testimony. Is there any other hands to raise in Zoom? Okay, and were there any of the sign-up sheets for this one? Jenna, do you remember? Okay, okay. Oh, go ahead, Hannah.
Mr. Chairman, I was able to look into that referenced conditional use application for the equipment share property off of Chinden. And while there weren't any specific conditions related to on-site employee hours or anything along those lines, there was still the condition to remove all chain link fencing and be replaced with code compliant fencing, but nothing regarding the on-site employee hours.
Thank you.
Because they were going to have, do we know that?
I think from memory that is what their business model was. They were going to have some kind of on-site office operations full-time.
Okay.
And potentially mechanic
Okay,
operations.
thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, the applicant can come back up and provide any rebuttal if there is it.
So we understand that we would have to get a propane permit for that tank and are willing to do that. We understand the requirement, city requirement for the fence. Honestly, a chain link fence works better for us. I don't know that I really want it to be fenced in and so it's not visible from the outside. I'm a little afraid about what people did get in there, then nothing can be, you can't see what would happen in there at night or whatever. And so also the security of just having the chain link at a minimum, but preferably the barbed wire, we would prefer that, obviously. I think we made that clear though in our application. As far as the desire to have it, bring business, be a high traffic, right now it's empty. It's an empty lot and it has been for a long time. We might not be high traffic, but we'd be more traffic than what's there today for sure. So.
I had one question I should have asked the first time you were up. And
Yep.
my apologies for not doing it then. So you mentioned trailers only, so that leads me to believe there's, and I think you said this in your materials, but I just want to make sure I understood this. So first of all, is it 100% trailer?
No, it's trailers and motorhomes, but but the majority are trailers. Right now, our current mix is 6 trailers, 3 motorhomes.
Okay.
That's what we have.
So people that are taking a motorhome, once the motorhome drives off the parking space, does their car go into the parking space, or do you have a parking solution, I guess is what I'm getting at?
So we did put in a couple customer parking spaces for the rare time that happens, but usually we have 2 scenarios. If it's a local rental, they come pick up the trailer and they drive it home because they need to go put all their stuff in it. So whoever drives them there in the first place just drives the car home because they need to get to the lot. Second, if it's an out of town, we offer a pickup from the airport. So we do that and we go get them with the motorhome and do that. And so there is no car. So it is I think last year we had 2 vehicles that we kept out of 150 rentals. So it's really a rare occurrence.
Okay.
Not never, but it's rare.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you. Commissioners, any other questions go ahead, Commissioner Brown.
Mr. Chairman, going back to your question you had, and which was addressed by Jenna and Hannah on the issue of whether or not this is a storage facility. If I understand it, as opposed to a vehicle rental location, of which the application is being applied under, because that will fit there. Essentially, though, what you said, you're going to be storing motorhomes here and trailers. Is that correct?
So there will be motorhomes and trailers on the lot, yes. And then they'll be rented, they'll be picked up from there and taken on whatever trip. And then they come back and then the next, they'll be cleaned. And then the next rental.
But the business model, that's why you indicated that you had some difficulty with 15 hours per week. That's because the other business of renting them and all the paperwork and all of those things will take place elsewhere. Is that correct?
Not elsewhere. It's just that when people reserve them, they reserve them online. We use a website to transact the money. It's not another business. It's not like we're charging a storage fee or something and having people store their RVs here and then renting some of them. Everything that's there is for rent. And they just go to the website to rent it, but that's the physical location that they come and pick it up, which is the way that this business is done. If you look out there, if you go to rent an RV anywhere, you go online, you rent it, and then you pick it up from the location. So it's similar to a car rental place, right? In a car rental, the vehicles are there, they're stored there, but it's not a storage lot for cars. Those vehicles are for rent, and we're the same situation.
That's the question.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, Commissioner Wilde.
Kind of the same line of discussion. You said 100 and how many rentals?
150-ish last year.
150 in a year, most of those May to September.
Yes.
What happens September till April? everything sits and looks
Unless
like
it-
storage and
unless it
nobody's
rents.
visiting the lot to take a.
Well, not nobody.
You get my point. It'll be
Yes,
less
there will be
active.
much, honestly, there's much less activity. That's when we do a lot of our maintenance and things on the trailers during that time. Busy season, there's no time to do that. So we'll
Sure.
be there during that time. But to guarantee 15 hours a week, some weeks it would be that easily, maybe some not so much. So.
Yeah, and I guess the point I'm trying to, the question I'm asking is, won't it look a lot like storage between October and April?
I suppose so. I mean, it could.
That's the.
Other than, we also agree that we would like to have a sign so that it's obvious it's there for rent. And if we could get,
Sure.
if that would help us get more winter business, that would be great.
Okay.
We're not opposed to that. We're not opposed to renting in the
Right.
winter.
Mr. Chair. Barbed wire and chain link fencing.
Yeah.
If you were required to remove it and replace it with code compliant fencing, would it be, if the conditional use permit gave you a year to do that, would that be an opportunity you are interested in?
We could look at it at that point. Yeah, I don't think we could, I mean, it will be a bit of a financial hardship to do it right away. So we would have to look at the math, get a bid on what that fence is going to be, and then I
Sure.
could tell you, but certainly that would be better than,
Right,
than asking out of the gate to do that.
sure. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I think that's it. I don't have any further questions for you.
Okay.
Thanks for coming up. Okay, that will close the public hearing. So we'll move on to the discussion amongst the commission about this. Commissioner Wilde.
This is a storage site today that's largely empty. So if you can't tell, I'm excited to have an active business there. Obviously wouldn't be active all year round, wouldn't have employees bustling around, wouldn't have facilities and what we all think of as a business, but I think it would be a vast improvement and really benefit that Glenwood area. I've always marveled at this lot, fenced in, gravelled in, largely empty lot. So I'm supportive of the application. I am also reluctant to require the applicant to remove the fence immediately in order to begin business, and would be inclined to delay that requirement not to exceed a year. And I would probably propose to remove any requirement for an employee to be on site. There's going to be an employee on site because these are $20, $30, $40, $50,000 RVs. And in order to be checked out and gone through and hitched up and removed from the property, they're going to want to have a very responsible employee on hand. So whether it's 15 hours or 10 hours or 25 hours, I don't think I care, nor should we care much. We just want it to be an active business. So those are my thoughts.
Commissioner Brown.
Okay, I'm very sympathetic to the idea of replacing an empty lot right now. It's got chain link fencing and barbed wire around it. So in the event that we were to approve that, let me address the chain link fence and barbed wire issue. It's the same issue that we talk about with regard to sidewalks. And we've talked about many times before. It's been a long-term goal of ours. It's in the comprehensive plan, and to eliminate all the chain link fencing and barbed wire that we have in the whole city. And that be given that the fact that it wasn't started earlier is the reason why we still have lots of barbed wire and lots of chain link fencing, including the what's over on the fairgrounds. However, we actually don't control that on the fairgrounds because the fairgrounds is not Garden City. If we had our choice, we would apply it over there, I think. So I'm not willing at all to do away with our requirements there. If there were no fence there and they had to put up a new fence, we wouldn't allow it. But I'm also, in the event that we do approve this, I'm willing to go along with Matt with regard to write something in there, give them a year to do it. That gives them time to see how well they're going to do there at that site in the event. So that brings me to the nub of it. I don't see how I can say this is going to be anything other than a storage facility. And especially when you realize where the 20% came from. This lot, most of the time, is going to be certainly more than 20% of it, 99% of it is going to be used as a storage facility. And it's going to be storing motorhomes and trailers. And it is different from the other lot that we just had for a vehicle rental facility that we just approved. That's over on Chinden. If you go over on that particular area, the business is located there, and it meets the definition, if you look in the code, of what a vehicle rental facility is. This doesn't. And it is different than the one that we did over on Chinden that Matt reminded me of, which is there. It's quite a going business if you look at it, if you go by there. They appear to me to be running a lot of equipment out, and they have their offices are right there on the site. And there was a temporary building there, if you might recall. And that's what they're losing. And their plans are to put a more permanent facility in there. So the business, it's a different thing. The business is operating there, okay? Albeit it is storing the vehicles that they're renting. So I understand their business model. And like I said, I'm sympathetic to it, but in my own case, I don't, with clear conscience, I can't say that this is not going to be most of the time, regardless of what percentage of the time or the hours. I don't even know how you enforce that. In fact, we wouldn't be enforcing it. If we approve this tonight, there will be no enforcement on whether that person is there 15 hours a week. In fact, much time in the winter, I suspect nobody will be there. Somebody might drive by and make sure you know that it's still secure. So for me, I cannot, as much as I wish I would, I can't see recommending approval of this on my part. And if it did go, and it may, well, if it does, my thoughts on the other conditions, they ought to stay like they are, but we ought to modify the fence one, so make it so that it gives them a year. That's my thing.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Brown. On the fencing, I'm supportive of Commissioner Wilde's solution there, whether it's a year or whatever. I'm fine with a year. A year makes sense, and that's great. But we do need to address the fencing there. The other thoughts I was having about whether or not this is a storage facility or a rental facility. It looks to the eye, people driving by, that like it's going to be a storage facility, but it is a business. It's going to look like a storage facility for a good chunk of the year, but nonetheless, there is a rental business happening or will happen if it's approved on this piece of property. So that's kind of how my brain is getting around that whole concept. So I am, oh, I guess I should say the other thing, the comprehensive plan and how this bumps up against the comprehensive plan. I have internal consternation with that. But at the same time, this is a business that's willing to come to Garden City. And it's an improvement on the use of the property now. So I still have some consternation with how this application goes up against the comprehensive plan, but I think overall I'm going to be supportive of this application. With respect to the fencing that we've got to address, and the propane tank, but I know we've talked about that and that's going to be addressed. So that's my thoughts on that. So sounds like we might be ready for a motion on this one.
Propane tank's not addressed in the.
But I thought
As a
we heard
condition.
that North Ada would require that. Did I misunderstand that? That it would be relocated? Maybe I might have misunderstood. And if Jenna, maybe you can correct me. I'm sorry if I misunderstood that.
Chairman, members of the commission, it's my understanding that they would require an operational permit through North Ada County. The particulars of what that permit or the location, I'm unaware of.
Okay, thank you.
But my point is, I don't think we necessarily need to address it. That's a NACFR issue. NACFR will require that.
Okay.
Jenna. Sorry. So just so we understand that, NACFR will require that. We don't necessarily need to address, it's not a proposed condition anywhere in our document.
Chairman, Commissioner Wilde, it is not in your documents. It is within the North Ada County Fire and Rescue comments that
Right.
they would be requiring a permit.
Requiring movement. Sorry.
Well, approval of, I may have to review that document to see how it's drafted. But it was a comment that was received by North Ada County Fire Rescue.
Just to ensure, if I recall, I would not want to put words in the applicant's mouth. They were fine with moving it. So maybe we just add that when the motion comes in, that it gets relocated to the back of the lot, just to cover that.
Well, my suggestion, you might, I assume that Matt will make the motion, put it in the back portion of the lot, because that way you're not going to get, they're going to be set off distances for that. I guarantee that you can't get within so far. So you might just say the back portion of the lot, rather.
Back third of the lot. Or
Yeah, something like that.
In accordance with North Ada County
Yeah,
Fire and
sure,
Rescue's
Yeah.
requirements. Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Wilde.
I will make a motion to approve CUP FY 22-7 and to modify the conditions, site-specific conditions of approval as follows. Number 2, relating to all chain link fencing and barbed wire to be removed from the site to be completed within 12 months from the date of approval. And for replacement fence to be compliant thereafter. So removal within a year and replacement. Site-specific condition number 3, I will propose to change the language on the conditional use permit approval to there should be an employee on site for an average of 15 hours per week. That is to not require necessarily that it be 15 hours a week, but that there should be an active employee presence on site. I propose to leave number 6. And I would propose condition number 14 remain as well. I will propose that any requirements North Ada County Fire and Rescue has for removal or moving of the propane tank to the back portion of the property be consistent with NACFR's requirements in accordance with discussion tonight. That concludes my motion.
I second it. So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of this application, say aye.
Aye.
Any nays?
Nay.
Okay, it's approved. Thank you very much. I guess I'll just ask, is there any other discussion items, either by staff or the commission at this point? Okay. Guys, good. Okay, we are adjourned.
Hey, 1955. Good job, Mr. Chairman.
Welcome to Garden City.
Yeah, good luck for your business.